Welcome to the Salvos. We trust that you'll be blessed by this week's video.
Well, the message this morning is a bit of a mishmash. It begins in Exodus with Moses and then moves on to the Psalms. And it's amazing, how God works. When Simon rang me and asked me what I was going to speak, I had no idea. I don't know what I said to him because I'd started working on my iPad, but then I couldn't print. It just wouldn't print for some reason. So I thought, okay, I will rewrite this all up on the old computer. I got so far, I lost it. I don't know where it went. I've still not found it. So I thought, okay, I've got to start again. I'll have to write it out by hand. I got so far and I had to stop to make a meal. I still haven't found it. I have no idea where it went. So then I had to start all over again. It's just been one of those weeks. You have them, but isn't it amazing how the Holy Spirit works? And I said to Simon, you pick the songs.
I think the old devil's trying to get in on that.
He is. Well, as I said to Simon, you pick the songs. And it's amazing how the songs he's chosen and the little thoughts he's brought and grown has brought has all tied in. It isn't amazing, isn't it? We pray that God will bless our meetings, that God will be with us. Well, that's what he does, and that's what he's done here again this morning. Well, you're all familiar with the story of the 10 plagues and how King Pharaoh just kept refusing to allow the children of Israel to go free. But then after the 10th one, when the first son of every family was killed, he gave in and he let them go. But then we remember how that later on, during the day, we've done the wrong thing here. We've lost all our slaves. And so he, with his armies, set out to get the children of Israel back. Well, we can imagine the children of Israel. We've got all ages, and of course they're animals. They're a huge crowd of a mix of people. And they get to the Red Sea, and how are they going to cross that? Then they look behind them and see a great cloud of dust. And they know it's King Pharaoh and his chariots, his soldiers, coming for them. And we can imagine that they would begin to panic. What were they going to do? And of course they start blaming poor Moses. It seemed like every time anything went wrong, it was poor Moses' fault. And we notice here in chapter 14 of Exodus, Moses replied to the people, "Don't be afraid, stand still and see what God is going to do for you." Then he goes on and he says to them, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to stand still." In other words, Moses tells the people to calm down, to stop panicking, and watch what God will do. I wonder if Moses really believed what he was saying. How many times in life have we said, "Don't worry, it will all work out, things will come right for you," but really, so often we have no idea how it's going to work. And I wonder if Moses felt a bit it like that? Or was his faith such that he really did believe God would get them out of this situation? God had freed them from Egypt. God had promised he was taking them to the new land. So, somehow, God was going to get them out of this situation. There are situations, aren't there, in our lives, difficult situations, when God says to us, stand still. Stand still. Don't be afraid. Stop panicking. Stand still and watch what I will do for you. Trust me. Rely on my promises. Remember how I have been with you, and through each situation have brought you. I wonder if Moses commanded the people to stand still, because in their confusion and panic, the first thing they wanted to do was run. I think it's rather a human thing, isn't it? Have you been on a cruise? We went on a cruise just recently. 2,600 of us on this ship, and over 1,000 staff, and in Canton more than 3,000 people. The first thing you have to do when you go on a cruise is to go to a debriefing. You have to get your life jacket, and you have to be going to this area. There you're shown how to put your life jacket on, and if the ship sounds 7 bells, then that's the time when calmly, quietly, slowly, you go back to your cabin, you get your life jacket, you go to a place where you'll be told what to do, because you're either on fire or you're sinking. Now, can you imagine? There are 16 decks, and I thought everywhere you go there are signs telling you what to do when you hear the 7 bells. And I ever laughed at myself. Here we are up on the 16th deck. Now we are going to walk very calmly and very slowly back down to our cabin, which is on the 5th deck. And then we're going to pick up our life jacket, and we're going to, and put something warm on, because it can get cold if you get in the water. Don't forget your medication, yes. Get your medication. Well, you do all this very calmly and quietly, and then you go to the area where you must wait for the staff to tell you what next to do. By then, 2,600 of you are probably well and truly in the water. And if it's dark because of you can't see because of the smoke, well then you crawl down the stairs from the 16th deck to the 5th deck. You crawl. Can you imagine? You're not going to panic. No, you're not going to panic. Very calm. You are going to do all this. Oh, how poor mother, it really did happen. Thank the Lord it did. But there are situations in our lives out there when we feel between the devil and the deep blue sea. But the Word tells us that when we're in those situations, the best thing to do is to stand still, keep our eyes on Jesus, and trust. It's not always easy, is it? Sometimes it's the last thing we want to do. But God has proved his faithfulness, hasn't he? And he will continue to be faithful. He will never leave us nor forsake us. One of the Psalms, in Psalm 73, is a very interesting psalm. This psalm is written by a man called Asaph, and he begins his psalm by saying that God is good to those who are pure in heart. But then in the second verse he says, but as for me, my feet had almost slipped. And he goes on to say how that he envied those who were wicked. It seemed, he said, they are carefree and they increase in their wealth. In vain, he says in verse 13, I've kept my heart pure. But God hasn't blessed me. Why hasn't God rescued me from my troubles? Why? Have you ever asked why? Why me? Why my family? When after all I've done my best, and now this, why? He goes on, verse 16, when I tried to understand all this, it didn't make any sense. The Message translation says, I ended up with a headache trying to work it all out. Nothing made sense until, in verse 17 he says, I entered the sanctuary. I think not only entered the temple, the sanctuary, physically, but he came into a place of quietness of mind where God could speak to him. And in that time of quietness, physically and mentally, he saw the big picture. And if you read the next few verses, you will read where he realises that yes, the wicked may seem as if they've got everything now, but one day all that will pass and they will have nothing. He saw what his jealousy and his bitterness and his ignorance had almost cost him. And more importantly, he remembered, he saw how rich he really was. And he goes on to say in verses 23 to 28, God, I'm always with you. You hold my right hand. You guide me. You will take me to heaven with you. You are my strength. You are all I need. Surely God is good. There's a lovely verse in Psalm 16 written by David. You, Lord, are all I have. You give me all I need. My future is in your hands. And I think those words sum up where Asaph had come to believe. His circumstances perhaps hadn't altered. The problems that had caused him to think like that he was rejected and God had forgotten him and everyone else had so much and he had nothing. All those things that had built up in his heart and mind, they may not have altered, but his frame of mind had, his priorities had. And perhaps you've been in similar situations, overwhelmed by some concern, some medical concern, some financial worry, or whatever it might have been. But the longer you've dwelt on the situation, the blacker it seemed to have got. But when you've stopped, when you've been quiet in God's presence, you've been able to see through. Perhaps it has not made the situation right, but He's helped you see the situation in its true light, and you've seen your way through. You've been able to cope. And with the psalmist, you've been able to come to the point of being able to say, you, Lord, are all I have. You give me all I need. My future is in your hands. It reminds me of that lovely chorus that we have sung so often. The first verse of the song, it's one of the lovely things about the new songbook, isn't it? We've got verses of some songs we've known choruses for years, but now we've got the verses. And the first verse says, I shall not fear though darkened clouds may gather round me. The God I serve is one who cares and understands. Although the storms I face would threaten to confound me, of this I am assured, I'm in his hands. I'm in his hands, whate'er the future holds. I'm in his hands. The days I cannot see have all been planned for me. His way is best. You see, I'm in his hands. Words that we should stick up somewhere every now and again to watch and to look at, aren't they? To remind us, I'm in his hands. Whatever the days may to have, whatever is there, we're in his hands. There's another psalm written by Asaph, Psalm 77. And here he begins in the first verse by crying out to God for help. He feels again in this psalm that he's forsaken, that God isn't listening to his prayers, and he couldn't sleep for worry. He felt rejected, forgotten. Similar situation to the psalm that I read earlier from Psalms 13, where David too felt that God had rejected him, forgotten him. Asaph was feeling down in the dumps just as David. But then after the storm that was raging in his mind had worn itself out, he began to remember. One of those situations perhaps where he had a sleep and then when he woke up in the morning he saw things clearly, or a cup of tea or a chat with a friend. But something happens that makes him see things in a different light. And in verse 11 where we read where he remembered what God had done in the past. And as he remembered God's goodness in the past, how God had always been there for him, so there came peace to his mind, freedom from his worries, and confidence that God would not fail. As God had been with him, so God would be with him. Yes, there is a time to stand still, to stand in God's presence, to remember how God has been good to us and has provided for us. And perhaps there's someone even here today who needs to come into the sanctuary, into God's presence, and remember how good God has been, and to remember that God will not let you down, will not fail, but will bring you through, no matter how dark the way may seem just now. There's a lovely promise for us all in 2 Corinthians chapter 20 and verse 17. Stand firm and see the deliverance the Lord gives you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. The Lord will be with you. But if we go back to our story we began with, Moses' story, where he said, stand still and see what God will do. The very next verse, God says to Moses, what are you doing standing here? Move on. Raise your staff. Stretch out your hand across the waters. And what God is saying here to Moses and to the people, now is not the time for sitting around complaining, for crying, why Lord, but a time for action. This was not the time to sit and wait for God to work, but a time for them to exercise their faith in God and their obedience to God. Was God testing their faith in him? Did Moses think of a strange request? I'm sure he did. Whatever he thought, he acted. And as he did so, we know the waters began to move apart and God provided safe travel for the children of Israel. And what is more, as Moses in faith did his part, God protected the people. He sent a thick cloud behind, so Pharaoh and his army couldn't see the children of Israel. And he sent a bright light, so the children of Israel, on the other hand, could see the way and stayed that way all night, protecting them. But also, I think, a reminder that God was there, God was over them, watching and caring. So what do we learn from all these stories today, these Psalms? There are times in our lives when we are faced with difficult situation, when burdened with a heavy heart, when faced with a lack of peace in our hearts. And the message from God is to do something, to exercise faith and obedience. We remember Jesus told a paralyzed man to pick up his mat and walk. Now he could have said, I can't, it's impossible, and he would have missed out on the wonderful experience of walking. There was the blind man. Jesus put mud on his eyes and told him to go and wash. He could have said, you're mad, Jesus, what a disgusting thing to do. But if he had, he would have missed out on having his sight restored. There are times when we're carrying a burden of guilt, when we lack peace because of unconfessed sin, when we know in our heart we ought to seek that forgiveness. If we want peace of heart, if we want forgiveness, we have to, in faith, act, don't we? So there are times when in faith and obedience to God, we must move, stretch out our hand in faith to God and be prepared to obey. One of the very old songs we used to sing says, if you want pardon, if you want peace, if you want sorrow and sighing to cease, look up to Jesus who died on the tree to purchase a full salvation. And what was that full salvation to provide? Pardon, peace, sorrow, a freedom from sorrow, a comfort, an encouragement, and so much more. But you know what? Whether God says stand still or move on, he adds a promise. Just before he left this world, we remember how he sent his disciples out, told them to go out into the world and take the message of the cross, of new life, of new hope. These were difficult days, very difficult days for the disciples just after the crucifixion, times when there was a great deal of difficulty for Christians. But the promise Jesus gave them, I will be with you. Yes, it can be difficult going out there and giving this message, but I'll be with you to the very end. And that's a promise that's not just for those first century disciples, but it stands today for you and me. So perhaps God is saying to you this morning, stop panicking, stop worrying, stop wanting to run away from the problem. Stand still and trust me to get through this situation. Or perhaps God is saying, stop standing there complaining, waiting for me or for others to work the situation out for you. Move forward, for this is a time to act, to put your action into action, your faith in me. Trust me and my promises for you. I will not let you down or leave you. May God bless us each one to put our faith, our trust in God, no matter whether the command is stand still or move on. May we do as God would ask us to do today. We are going to now sing, as we come to the closing meeting, one of the loveliest of our hymns. Great is thy faithfulness. And we repeat, don't we, the faithfulness of God, the goodness of God, as we sing these.